Yo, what's up everyone? My name is Yura and welcome to the final deck profile of Cope Week. This is kind of I know these have all been kind of weird ones, but this one specifically is a bit of a weird one. So every other deck in Cope Week so far has been a deck that has, at the very least, like kind of popped up in the rogue scene. Maybe not some of them. X-Saber is not really that good, but like the rest of them, like people were playing around, like you'd see them at like the mid tables of regionals at the time or something to the sort. Today is not quite that. Today we're talking about Synchro Infernity, and Synchro Infernity, for anyone that is not aware, is actually the more popular variant of Infernity prior to Meadowlands occurring. Synchro Infernity was the way to play the deck for a very, very long time because this is a 5Ds era deck. This came out well before the Xyz monsters that enable the Xyz spam version of this deck did, and it does have some very interesting tools. It's still absolutely a balls to the walls combo deck that aims to set up a bunch of different forms of like negation or interruption, and uninterrupted going first with a good hand can genuinely just win a game all on its own, that you probably saw if you watched the intro to Meadowlands video where we showed off Infernity just kind of going nuts on its own. The Synchro build is a little weirder though. This is a deck that revolves around its kind of extra deck specific monsters, not really. We are technically using two different Infernity Synchro boss monsters in Void Ogre Dragon, which is their manga boss monster, and 100 Eyes Dragon, which is like the Dark Signer Infernity boss monster, and then we're ignoring Infernity Doom Dragon because that card is giga ass. I do not want to play Infernity Doom Dragon. This card is just kind of like worse in every way over like Dark End Dragon. It's very, very similar, if not the exact same materials. And the only difference is that Infernity Doom Dragon is a little larger, but we already have a 3000 attack point monster in our extra deck. As a matter of fact, we actually have two different ones. All of the main Infernity boss monsters are all 3k attackers. So we don't really need a bad Volcasaurus to fix up our extra deck here. We're totally fine without it. Synchro Infernity uses a lot of the same things that regular Infernity does, in that you are trying to loop Archfiends because Archfiend's not once per turn. You're using that alongside Necromancer to get a bunch of searches in a turn, and a general like Dark/Fiend package to make it even better. Where things differentiate is in the final two monsters of the main deck. Those being Infernity Avenger, which is our tuner of choice, and Infernity Mirage, which is Infernity Launcher on legs. These two cards are what makes the Synchro version of this deck work. I will say, Avenger might as well be a vanilla monster. The only reason why Avenger is important is because it is a 1-star Fiend tuner with Infernity in its name. Its actual effect might as well not exist. It's so unimportant. It can, in theory, come up. It is like a way to get field presence back after you lose all of your monsters in like a board wipe. But I'm gonna be honest, if you're getting board wiped in Infernity, that means that your first turn play was not enough to hold off your opponent. And this deck, while it can kind of play out of its graveyard, it really normally wants to use Infernity Launcher for that, and Launcher is at 1 in this format, so not ideal, not ideal. But that said, the main reason that I wanted to talk about Synchro Infernity during Cope Week is because I actually really like this deck. I think what Xyz Infernity brings to the table in general consistency and its ability to spam the board with pretty much anything you could want in the Xyz toolbox of this era, at least among rank 4s. I think Synchro Infernity has some higher ceiling tools that I personally really like a lot. And a lot of that is concentrated in Void Ogre Dragon and 100 Eyes Dragon and the deck's ability to make like Scrap Dragon or Dark End Dragon. I think this is a very, very cool way to play Infernity in this format, even if it is a little more inconsistent, because finding your tuner is a little more difficult. But that said, we're still going to go through the card by card. I'm going to try and give a general overview as we go through of how these cards are all meant to work together. And then we're going to show the deck off in some games and see if maybe this deck could find its way to join its sister deck in the Xyz Infernity somewhere among the meta. Although, if I'm going to be honest, just going off of past testing, I Really don't know if we're going to get there, but I sure as hell do want to try. So we're going to start things off with arguably the most important card in the entire deck, Infernity Archfiend. Infernity Archfiend is a level 4 Dark Fiend monster that when you draw this card while you have no cards in your hand, you can reveal this card and special summon it from your hand. When this card is special summoned, you can add an Infernity card from your deck to your hand, and you must have no cards in your hand to activate and resolve this effect. So, unfortunately, there is a couple of pieces about this card that feel really not good. That when you draw while you have no cards in your hand and you draw this card, you can reveal this card, special summon it from your hand. That misses timing. So it is specifically made to not work alongside Upstart Goblin. Because Upstart Goblin, the final thing that happens is not the draw, but instead your opponent gaining the 1000 life points. So the way that this is going to resolve, if you go Lavalval Chain, stack Archfiend to the top of your deck, you will draw the card with Upstart Goblin, and then you will give your opponent 1000 life points. And then Archfiend is going to go, I'm in the hand now. But was I just drawn? No, my opponent just gained life points. That's the effect that just happened. So I guess I'm just going to sit here and do nothing. So Archfiend will just stick in your hand and not do anything. We have ways of making this work, though. The main things that we are on to facilitate summoning this Archfiend out of our hand or just getting it into rotation generally are through like Stygian Street Patrol, which gets us out of our hand, and Infernity Necromancer, which gets it out of our graveyard. Also, we are playing Double Summoner Monk to get it out of deck. We have a way of getting Archfiend onto field from no matter where it is in rotation. Even if it's in banishment, we can get it back through Levier the Sea Dragon, and we do play threes, so it's not impossible to make. But Archfiend is the cornerstone of this deck. The main gameplay loop that you're going to be trying to do during any general Infernity game, whether it's Xyz Spam or Synchro Infernity, is resolving Archfiend as many times as physically possible during a given turn. The reason for this is because not only can you search your One of Infernity launcher, which is double reborn for Infernity monsters, but you can also get access to Infernity Break, which is a targeted pop for banishing an Infernity card, and Infernity Barrier, which is an Omni Negate, which is unbelievably powerful. Archfiend can also search other copies of itself. It can search out your Tuner, it can search out Mirage, it can search out Necromancer. This card is phenomenal, and if you're not activating its effect at all during the course of a game, you're probably going to lose, if I'm just going to be flat out honest with you. So Archfiend is really, really important. It's the only monster that we're running at 3 in this list for a very specific reason, and that is because we want to see it as often as possible. I think if you wanted to make an argument for another monster to be run at 3, that is the Stygian Street Patrol, because the hardest place to get Infernities into rotation from is the hand. This deck does not have a good way of a double summoning. A lot of it relies on you having no monsters in your hand, or rather no cards in your hand to do anything. But unlike spells and traps, you can't set monsters in your back row, despite how often you might want to. Speaking of Stygian Street Patrol, we're going to go a little out of order here to talk about Street Patrol because it is one of your main combo enablers. Street Patrol is a dark level 4 fiend that it does have a first effect of if this card destroys a monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can burn your opponent for the original level of that monster in the graveyard times 100. That effect is okay, but realistically it doesn't matter too much. The real effect that we care for on Street Patrol is this second effect. That being, you could banish this card from your graveyard in order to special summon a fiend monster with 2000 or less attack from your hand. This is every single Infernity name. They all have less than 2000 attack, at least for the Infernities that we are currently playing. There are some other Infernity monsters that you could, in theory, play. I know specifically Xyz Infernity in the past has run like a single copy of Infernity General to try and facilitate like a little bit more board presence. I don't think this card is terrible. The main problem is that it just doesn't really fit cohesively in with the rest of what this deck is doing. I think you could still totally do it. It does make an easy Synchro 8 with General alongside Avenger, and you can get the General out of your graveyard with Necromancer or with Launcher. Like, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying it's even necessarily a bad idea. It's just not something that I am currently running. So do with that what you will. If you want to try General out, I absolutely encourage it. I think it is a really interesting card. And even though it does negate the monsters that it summons from graveyard with its graveyard banishing effect, it is still a way of getting multiple Infernity names onto your board for synchro plays, or even for like a quick Xyz play to make something like the Levy or the Sea Dragon, which is not terrible. The other card that I've seen in some historic lists is like Infernity Guardian, but I don't really think we need an Infernity monster that just can't be destroyed. I think that's kind of whatever. And then for a while, the main tuner of choice for Infernity decks was Beetle. Beetle allowing you to tribute itself to special summon up to 2 Infernity Beetles from your deck. Unfortunately, this is a really, really awkward card to play because if you open 2 Beetles, you are going to get stuck with one of them in your hand. Additionally, it's an insect and not a fiend, so it doesn't pair nicely with our Stygian Straight Patrol, which we do not appreciate. The rest of the Infernity monsters are kind of whatever. I was at some point messing around with Zero Max as just like an additional way of reborning an Infernity monster, but I'm not fully sure about it. I mean, it's not a terrible card. It is still like, in theory, an Infernity Reborn that doesn't negate the monster's effects and also blows up all face-up monsters on the field with attack less than that monster's attack that you summon. Like, it's not the worst card in the world. It's certainly not the worst card I've ever read. And it's not like Scrap Lube, which is a card that we're going to talk about next week, that like both of them stop you from conducting your battle phase. But Lube is like an equip card, I'm pretty sure, that has to stay on field. Zero Max is just a normal spell, which means it can't be negated by MST, which is nice. That said, I'm not on any of these. I think you could mess around with them. They're not the worst cards I've ever read. I'm not currently on them. Moving along with the rest of the cards that actually made the cut, though, we're on Double Dark Grepher, and I'm going to be super honest. You could maybe swap this single copy of Armageddon Knight for 2 copies of Dark Grepher, just specifically because you want the ability to discard darks from your hand when you need to. Opening like Arma Knight plus Archfiend does still technically get that Archfiend out of your hand. But if you have multiple darks in your hand, say you have like Grepher double Archfiend, you need to be able to get like both of those darks out of your hand. And with just Arma Knight instead of Dark Grepher in that specific scenario, you could go Arma Knight, dump Stygian Street Patrol, and then Stygian out one of the Archfiends, but you're not getting that Archfiend's effect because the second one would still be in your hand. With Dark Grepher, you could pitch the second Archfiend to dump a Stygian Street Patrol and then use that Street Patrol to summon an Archfiend from your hand. You're still not getting both Archfiend summons, but it is setting you up much nicer for any other Infernity names that you might have on hand. That's all to say, I love Grepher in this deck. It is maybe one of my favorite normal summons alongside Summoner Monk. The main reason I like Summoner Monk is because Summoner Monk can get Dark Grepher. So genuinely, if you wanted to play 3 Grepher, no Arma Knight, I could totally see it. I honestly would not blame you. I might even do it at some point in the future. I think Grepher is just phenomenal here. This card is genuinely unbelievable. One other thing that I want to mention before we move on to the rest of the monsters is with Dark Armed Dragon. This is in the Xyz version of the deck. Could also be here. If I'm going to be super honest, I kind of just don't know what the cut is. It's maybe this Mindcon to the side, but I don't really know where the space is, and I kind of like Mindcon in main, so that is a phenomenal card. It's really easy to set up in this deck. I genuinely just do not know where the cut is. So you are free to use Dad. Please do. I think it's probably better than maybe the Upstart in here, but I really want to play as low of a monster count as possible, so I'm not currently on it. This list right now is heavily focused on trying to make Synchro Infernity as consistent as possible. And to do so, we are cutting out some of the other big power cards like Dark Armed Dragon to make sure that we are getting our line off as often as possible, which is why we're so set on just this kind of monster lineup that you see here with like the Arma Knights, the Grephers, the Stygians. They're all ways to facilitate getting Archfiends on board and getting the Infernity line going. We're also on 2 copies of Summoner Monk. I don't think I really need to explain this card. It discards a spell to summon any level 4 monster from your deck. This can be Archfiend, this could be Grepher, this could be Street Patrol if you so desired. Could be another copy of Monk. Just really good for getting access to a part of your engine that you don't currently have. We're on double copies of Infernity Necromancer. This card, when normal summoned, it is changed to defense position, and if you have no cards in your hand, this card gains the following effect. Once per turn, you can select an Infernity monster in your graveyard except Necromancer and special summon it. This is going to be your main way of both getting your synchro lines going and also coming back into the game after like you try and do like a turn 1 push, or you just need like a good summon that can get your Infernity names back in rotation. Necromancer is a phenomenal card. It's got a really big butt, so it's kind of weird to out. And it's also like not super threatening on its own. So like it doesn't really facilitate a whole lot of interactions. Most of the time, if you have other stuff to do, the single Necromancer is not going to be the target of hate. It's going to be something else. But also, you know, Necromancer is a damn good card, so sometimes it is just worth hitting. The final 2 Infernity monsters that we are on, and the final 2 monsters that we are generally on in the main, are both Infernity Avenger and Infernity Mirage. We're going to go over the Avenger first, and then we're going to touch on Mirage. Avenger is a 1-star Fiend Tuner that reads, when a monster you control except Avenger is destroyed by battle with an opponent's monster and sent to the graveyard, while you have no cards in hand, you can special summon this card from your graveyard. In that case, the level of this card is equal to the level of your destroyed monster. So this is kind of an interesting way of just getting a synchro level on board as a game goes. But I'm going to be honest, this is a really specific card effect. Like, you have to lose in battle, have it be sent to graveyard while your hand is empty. Things that should, in theory, happen over the course of an Infernity game, but not guaranteed to happen. So a lot of the times, Avenger is just your 1-star Infernity named tuner of choice. Mirage is a special case, though. This card is unbelievably powerful, even if it is a little weirder to deploy. Mirage is a 1-star non-tuner fiend monster that reads, cannot be special summoned from the graveyard, important. And if you have no cards in your hand, you can tribute this card in order to target 2 Infernity monsters in your graveyard and special summon them. Mirage is unbelievably powerful. Mirage is searchable. It's another copy of Launcher, but it does take your normal summon. Or if you manage to get it into the graveyard and then banish it off of something, you can get it back off of something like Levier the Sea Dragon. And just because Mirage can't be summoned from the graveyard does not mean you can't get it back from banishment, which is really important. This makes Mirage a really nice target for Allure of Darkness, but it's also the main reason why we are playing 100 Eyes Dragon in the first place, and we'll touch on that when we get to the extra deck. Onto our spells, we are on 1 copy of Allure of Darkness because it's limited to 1, 3 copies of Instant Fusion because Infernity loves this card, 1 copy of 1 for 1 to get us both access to Mirage and Avenger, 1 Heavy, 1 Dark Hole, 1 Reborn, 1 Rhoda to get us access to Grepher or Arma Knight, 1 Minecon in main just because it's a decent card and it's like a fine card to set. Triple copies of Upstart Goblin as just cards to set because we don't want them to be monsters. 1 Foolish Burial to get our Graveyard Engine online. Triple copies of MST because why not? And 1 copy of Infernity Launcher because it is limited to 1. Launcher is a continuous spell that reads, once per turn you can send an Infernity monster from your hand to the graveyard, and you can send this card to the graveyard to target 2 Infernity monsters in your graveyard, special summon them, and you must have no cards in your hand to activate and resolve this effect. This can get you back any Infernity names. Even if you wanted to play Infernity Doom Dragon, this could get you that back. The only thing it can't get you back is your Mirage because Mirage cannot be summoned from a graveyard. But Launcher is an unbelievably powerful card. It is so good. And the only reason why I think Infernity is not even better in this format is because Launcher is at 1. Onto our traps, we're only on 4 generics, the 1 Warning, the 1 Judgment, and the double Bottomless, and the rest are our Infernity traps. We're on double copies of Break, which reads, if you have no cards in your hand, you can target an Infernity card in your graveyard and a card your opponent controls, banish the first target, and if you do, destroy the second target. This is another way that you can banish your Mirage out of graveyard to get back off of Levier, but it's also just a way of like getting rid of spent resources that you don't really need anymore. And then finally, we have our 2 copies of Infernity Barrier, a counter trap that reads, when your opponent activates a spell or trap card or monster effect while you control a face-up attack position Infernity monster and have no cards in your hand, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Barrier and Break make up the wall that is Infernity. This is the main reason why Infernity is so strong in this format, is because it has searchable access to some genuinely incredibly powerful and really difficult to play around back row. Onto our extra deck, we've got the 2 instant fusion targets. Both of them are the darks. I don't really know if that matters too much. I think it does, but I'm not checking. We are on our boss monsters for the deck, which is 1 copy of Void Ogre Dragon. This requires a Dark Tuner and 1 non-tuner monsters. And once per turn, when your opponent activates a spell or trap card while you have no cards in your hand, quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. This is kind of the boss monster of Teledad in this format, and it's also the boss monster of Synchro Infernity. This is a phenomenal effect. Your hand is going to be empty pretty much all the time if you're playing in an ideal scenario. And then Void Ogre is just like a really solid statted card at 3k, 3k. This is a really annoying card to play around, and it's generally really, really good. Next up, we've got double copies of 100 Eyes Dragon, and we're going to stop here for a little bit to talk about this guy because 100 Eyes is, in my opinion, the reason to play Synchro Infernity. 100 Eyes Dragon is an 8-star, 3k attack Dark Dragon monster that can be made using a Dark Tuner and a non-tuner Fiend monster. Once per turn, you can banish a level 6 or lower Dark Effect monster from your graveyard until the end phase. This card's name becomes that monster's original name and replace this effect with that monster's original effect. If this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can add an Earthbound Immortal monster from your deck to your hand. That final effect, we are not using. You cannot make me use that. I will never use that. We're good. We're not playing field spells. We're not playing Earthbound Immortals. Don't worry about it. The main important part of 100 Eyes Dragon is that first effect. Being able to banish any level 6 or lower Dark Effect monster from your graveyard means you get to double up on Necromancer activations, Infernity Mirage activations, and then even though you have to tribute your 100 Eyes Dragon to activate a Mirage, getting a Mirage effect is functionally just another copy of a launcher for a card that is limited. Like, this is the main reason why we play Mirage. It's not to field Mirage on its own. It's to use it as effect fodder for 100 Eyes Dragon. Even if you're not going to use 100 Eyes to get Mirage's effect, you can still use it as another copy of Infernity Necromancer, which is still really good. Necromancer is just a reborn for any Infernity monster in your graveyard. That can still do a lot. I adore 100 Eyes Dragon. It also, because you're copying Infernity names, you're also going to turn 100 Eyes into an Infernity monster for things like Infernity Barrier if something gets outed. So Barrier can stay online while you are doing 100 Eyes plays, which is pretty sick. I love this card. I think this is the reason to play this deck in this format, and it is one of my favorite boss monsters to field. I think it's such a unique effect. It is so cool to field, and it has a lot of really interesting applications in this deck specifically. The rest of our synchros are just some other generic toolbox cards that are generally pretty good. We're on 1 Scrap Dragon because this is our main way of outing Gaios. We don't really have a good way of otherwise doing that. It beats Gaios' attack threshold at 28. It also just has this kind of effect in this deck where, much like Xyz Infernity, these decks just tend to have like a bunch of random materials sitting around on board that you can just kind of use for either Diamond Direwolf or Scrap Dragon like effects to clear them off your board so you can make space for more Archfiend summons. Generally just a really solid card. We're also on a copy of Dark End Dragon. This, in theory, we could probably cut the Black Ship of Corn here. Actually, I'm just going to do that because we have Dark End Dragon, so we have a way of outing the Maystroke. And actually, something that I did want to try here, I don't know if it's good, but I am going to try it here, is Stygian Sergeants. This is, in theory, a way of breaking through a relatively low attack point board with relatively low investment. And it is something that I want to try out. Stygian Sergeants is a level 5 Fiend Synchro that requires a Fiend type tuner and 1 or more non-tuner monsters. And when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can have this card gain 800 attack until the end of the battle phase. And also it can make a second attack in a row. I like this in theory. I don't know if it's actually going to be good, and it might get cut again after the games, but it is something that I have been wanting to try out, and I totally just forgot to add it to this version of the deck. It was in the previous build and I just forgot to move it over, but it is something that I wanted to try, so we are going to try it. We're also on 1 copy of Armory Arm. It's just like a thing to make with Avenger plus Necromancer, and it is like, it can do something. We are still playing some Xyz monsters, even in this Synchro version of Infernity. We're on the 1 Diamond Direwolf, which does a very similar thing to Scrap Dragon. 1 Maystroke for defensive plays, a double Lavalval Chain, because even though we're not on the Xyz version of the deck, Lavalval Chain is still a godsend to all Infernity players. This card is almost built for this deck. It is so good. And I would not play Infernity without it in any form. We're on 1 Abyss Dweller for graveyard decks and a Leviar the Sea Dragon, just in case our things get banished. Onto our side deck, notice we're on no hand traps because this deck wants to play handless. So we are instead on Lightning Vortex, Night Beams, Foolish Returns, Mind Crushes, and Debunks. These Mind Crushes could maybe be DDGs because you cannot activate Mind Crush while you have no cards in your hand. So I think I might actually just do that. Different dimension, ground. Could maybe be something else. I don't really know if I'm going to be honest, but this is just kind of where the side deck is at. This is definitely an older side deck. I think it could still probably use some additional work, but for right now, we're going to rock with it. So with all that said, this is one of the longer deck overviews that I've done for one of the decks in Cope Week. So I've yapped for quite long enough. Let's see it in action. Okay, much like with, I think it was Wind Up, right? We are putting Synchro Infernity into the real gauntlet here. This is mainly just because this is a variant of an already meta deck and it is just slightly different. So honestly, I think putting it up against like Machina Gadget or Dragoonity or some other deck probably is not a good indicator of how it's going to perform. This specifically is a bit of an older replay. I'm not going to lie, this is on the old build, so we're missing a couple of pieces. Don't kill me over that. The decks aren't too different. I think it's just mostly like we are on an additional monster. I think there is a 3rd Stygian Street Patrol in this build, and the extra deck is slightly different, but overall, the main engine is the same. The main concept is the same. And we are currently playing into Gen X Mermail. This is a variant of Mermail that I actually like a lot because I like normal summoning Undyne and getting full combo. Well, not full combo, but getting like Megalo online as opposed to pure Mermail where it's really hard to find your 7-star guys. So we have opened this game with a 1-for-1 Dark Refer, Allure of Darkness, Bottomless Travel, and a Stygian Street Patrol into our opponent's Deep Sea Diva, Atlantean Heavy Infantry, Mermail Abyss Lind, Abyss Sphere, and Allure of Darkness. This Allure of Darkness in their deck is for the Gen X controller that they search out with Undyne. So we're going to get things started and see how this plays out. We're going to draw into a Bottomless Trapple off the top, go for this Allure of Darkness immediately, and find 2 monsters. That's not ideal. We're going to go 1-for-1, though, to get one of these Stygian Street Patrols out of the hand to get into an Infernity Avenger. Go Dark Refer. Dark Refer is going to pitch both the Stygian Street Patrol and then dump Infernity Archfiend to the graveyard. We're then going to sync off using the Avenger and the Dark Refer to make a Stygian Sergeants and set both bottomlesses. It's over to our opponent now, who is going to draw into a Lind for turn. They're going to normal summon out this Deep Sea Diva. Diva is going to go get themselves a Marksman. They're going to make a Catastrophe, and we are going to flip a Bottomless. We're going to eat that board, and they're going to set this Abyss Sphere before passing back to us. We're going to find a break off the top and then just swing in for 22 with Sergeants. They are going to go into Lind. We are going to trigger Sergeants by running over that Lind, and they're going to go into a Pike. That Pike is unfortunately not going to trigger because I think it's damage step or something like that. Something makes it mistiming or something like that. But we are just going to walk over that Pike with the Sergeant that is now 3k, and they're going to lose their Abyss Sphere back to them. They're going to find a Dragoons. They're going to go this Abyss Lind to try and get this Dragoons online by going into a Pike, but unfortunately they're going to walk to a Bottomless and pass to us. We're going to swing in for 22, keep them off everything that we can. And then they're going to find a Dark Hole off the top. They're going to summon out this other copy of Lind, go this Dark Hole, which is going to trigger that Lind. Lind is going to summon out this Pike. Pike is going to ditch this Dragoons to get themselves a copy of Gun. The Dragoons is going to get them a copy of a Megalo. They're going to bitch both of those cards to get a Megalo summon and a search, a Gun trigger in the graveyard. And we are going to use a break here to clear their Megalo off the board so they just have a Pike on board. They're going to swing in for 2 copies of 16 damage before going to the end phase. A couple of things here, just kind of like a mindless misplay that it's an older replay that things happen. 1, they forgot to set the Abyss Sphere, and 2, they forgot to make Abyss Dweller here, which is really going to come to bite them in the butt. We're going to draw into a Necromancer off the top, and this is everything that we need. We're going to go Necromancer, summon Archfiend. Archfiend is going to search out another copy of Archfiend. We're going to go the Stygian Street Patrol in the graveyard to get Archfiend on board. Archfiend for Necromancer, Street Patrol for Necromancer, and then it's time to make some Xyz monsters. We're going to go Diamond Direwolf to clear off one of these Pikes, get both of these Archfiends back into the graveyard. We're going to go Necromancer to get this Archfiend back online, get a Launcher in rotation, go Leviar the Sea Dragon. Sea Dragon is going to reborn this Avenger. We're going to go the Infernity Launcher. Launcher is going to summon out both this copy of Necromancer and this copy of Archfiend. Archfiend is going to get us a copy of Barrier. We're going to sync off for 100 Eyes Dragon. 100 Eyes is going to banish the Stygian Sergeants so we can swing in for 8 and then in for 38, killing our opponent. All right, the end of that game too was a little messy. Unfortunately, just forgot to make Dweller. It is what it is. These things happen sometimes. I think that game could have ended very differently if they had found, or if they had made Dweller, but even though I think we did probably still have a way to get something done even without the Stygian Street Patrols, so there was probably a line to lethal there even without that misplay, so it is what it is. Game 2, though, we are into Gund, Heavy Storm, Marksman, Warning, and Dragoons with our Reinforcement of the Army, Infernity, Archfiend, Summoner Monk, Bottomless Trapple, and Stygian Street Patrol. So let's see what we... Oh, why'd that swap? So they're going to draw for turn into a Teus. They're going to go Teus Pitch Goons. That is the best play that they could possibly get. They're going to go grab a Megalo and a Pike. They're going to go Megalo, pitch both the Gund and the Pike, trigger the Megalo, and then trigger the Gund in the graveyard to get them a copy of Pike to field. They're going to go into Gaios here and then set with the Warning and the Abyss Sphere. Over to us, we draw another monster for turn. That's really not ideal. We're going to go this Rhoda to try and get Greffer online because Greffer could, in theory, get this hand unbricked, but unfortunately, we're going to walk directly into a Warning. They're going to trigger a Sphere before we go to end phase and summon out a Pike. They're going to go Pike to pitch this Marksman. Marksman is going to eat our Bottomless Trapple, and it's back to them. They're going to normal summon out this copy of Gen X Controller before walking in for 28, 16, 14, and 16. Game's not quite over yet, but I think them making this copy of Dweller here is going to be everything that they need to wrap this game up. We kind of have nothing to do with this hand, nothing that we can really contest on their board, so we're just going to scoop it up and pass to our game 3. All right, really rough game 2 for us there. Finding all these monsters in our hand when you're only playing 15 of them is really not ideal. Even more so in the newer version of the deck when it happens because you're only on 14 monsters, and sometimes you do just open a hand of 4 monsters, which sucks. But that's not what we're doing here. We've got game 3, and our hand is looking significantly better. We've got a Break, a Foolish Return, a Summoner Monk, and an Infernity Necromancer, and an Instant Fusion into our opponent's Teus, a Pike, Undyne, Megalo, and Solemn Judgment. Our hand is looking a lot better than theirs because this break could, in theory, just stop them in their tracks, and we do have a check for the Undyne in the Foolish Return, so let's see what we can do here. We're going to draw into an MST and go for this copy of Summoner Monk. Summoner Monk is going to activate, sending this MST to get ourselves a copy of Archfiend, which we could not activate, unfortunately. We're going to go Evolve Chain with those 2/4s to get Stygian Street Patrol online. Street Patrol for Necromancer. Necromancer is going to get us a copy of Archfiend to the field. Archfiend is going to trigger, get us a Launcher. We're going to go Launcher and use this copy of Instant Fusion to get us a Flame Ghost to the field. We're going to go Leviair. Leviair is going to reborn that Stygian Street Patrol out of our banishment. We're going to go another copy of Evolve Chain to dump another copy of, or to get a copy of Avenger before then going the Archfiend and the Necromancer using this copy of Launcher. We're going to go the Archfiend to get a Barrier online. Now we've got Barrier, Break, and Return into our opponent's hand. We're going to go this normal summon of Undyne, which we are going to send back to the deck. Goodbye, Dragoons, with that copy of Foolish Return. They're still going to add that Gen X Controller, but we are going to barrier this activation of Teus because they pitched a Pike, which is not ideal, so we're just kind of assuming that their hand isn't looking that great. We're going to eat that, and then now they're out of water targets in their hand for this Megalo, so they're just going to set this Judgment before we go this copy of Infernity Break to eat that back row before it's online. Slight misplay from us here. We should have banished this Infernity Avenger from Graveyard instead of the Barrier because we do have Leviair online, but also we don't really have a good way of clearing our board right now because we do not have like a Diamond Direwolf online, and we don't have a good way to make it. We're going to go this copy of Evolve Chain, detaching this Monk to get a Street Patrol in the graveyard, and then the other chain to get a Mirage in the graveyard. We're going to set this Foolish Burial before walking in for a bunch of damage, but it's not going to be enough to kill our opponent. It's back over to them, and let's see what they can find here. They find another copy of Megalo, which isn't nothing. They're going to pitch Megalo and the Pike in graveyard to get themselves a copy of Abyss Sphere. We're going to lose our Necromancer, and unfortunately, another misplay from us here, I think. Reborning this Avenger is actually actively bad for us because now we've clogged our zone with a level 3 tuner that can't really make anything. They're going to set this Sphere, and we're going to draw into a Greffer. We're going to walk our chains both into this Megalo because they're spent and we need the board space. We're going to go a Diamond Direwolf. Diamond Direwolf is going to pop both itself and this Megalo to get it off the board. And they're going to go for this copy of Abyssland as we go to the end phase. Lind is going to summon out a copy of Teus because there's out of Megalos. And it's back to them when they find another copy of Lind. They're going to set that Lind and pass to us. We're going to draw for turn an Archfiend, which does trigger. We're going to go Archfiend for a Necromancer. And then in main one, we're going to use this Stygian Street Patrol to summon out this Necromancer. Necromancer is going to get us into a copy of Archfiend. Archfiend is going to search out a copy of Break. And we're going to make another Diamond Direwolf. This is the old build as a reminder. That probably should have been a Black Ship of Corn, would have burned 1,000 life points off our opponent. and made this game a little easier to close out, but it's going to be fine. We're going to use that Foolish Barrier to fill our graveyard a little bit more before walking into a land for a Pike, which does not currently do anything. They're going to draw into an Undyne, which is currently dead. They're going to go into a copy of Gen X Controller, which is going to make that Gungnir, but we are going to break that Gungnir and clear their board. We're going to banish that Mirage, and then using the Leviar, we're going to get that Mirage back to our field, use the Mirage effect to tribute itself, making both a copy of Archfiend and Necromancer. Archfiend is going to trigger to get a barrier. We're going to set that barrier and then walk in for lethal. Okay, so we're back with the deck, and this is the wrong version. This is the one we're looking at. So if you want to see the differences, it's really not that much. I think the side deck is slightly different with the DDGs instead of the Mirror Forces and the Minecon. And the main is slightly different with one less copy of Street Patrol and the Minecon in main. But that's honestly it. The decks are relatively similar, and then the extra deck has seen a little bit of touch-ups as well. That said, though, I like this deck a lot. I don't know if it's going to be ever enough to stand up to Xyz Infernity, but I do really like what the Synchro pool for this deck allows us to get access to. The main problem is getting access to that Synchro pool. I think if we can find a way to make that a little more consistent, this deck is actually potentially a proper like a branch off path for Infernity. And it's just a matter of figuring out what that is and trying to go from there. For right now, I am pretty okay with where the deck is at, although I don't really think there is much of a reason to play this version over the Xyz version, but that's why it's a part of Cope Week. I want to see if anyone else has any ideas on how to make this version of the deck specifically better, because I do really like it and I love fielding these Synchro boss monsters. They are really fun to play with. I really, really like the general toolboxing that it allows for. But with all that said, I don't really have too much else to say about Synchro Infernity. It is just kind of Infernity, and I think there has been a pretty decent understanding that Infernity generally is a really solid deck in this format. So I'm not going to talk about it too much, but I do want to just put it out there that if anyone has ideas for how to make this version of the deck better, please do let me know. I want this deck to be better than it currently is. But with all that said, I've yapped quite enough, and we're going to hop out of here. And tomorrow will be the final video of Cope Week, where we finally tackle Hero. So I hope you all stick around for that, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye!